everybody, welcome to our live. I am Francesca Duval and this is...
I'm Ryan Duval.
And we're the owners and founders of Alchemist Farm. We've been collecting all of your questions that you have given us this past week to answer. And we've got a nice little handy dandy list here. We'll get to them, and if there's anything that you guys think of, you can throw it in the chat here and we'll see if we can fold it into what we're doing. So a lot of people were interested in knowing just a general overview of the different breeds that we have and the things that we like most about both of them. Someone was asking specifically about Bantam Breeds, and they're really easy to talk about, so we thought we'd just start there. Ryan really likes the Bantam Cochins. Why?
Well, honestly, our daughter really likes the Bantam Cochins because they're just such a friendly breed. They're very small, and the Roosters are the ones that we have. They're very friendly. The one, is it Frizzle Feather?
Frizzle Feather's the female, and then she has so many different pet
Raindrop.
Raindrop.
So Raindrop is the rooster, of course, and so Raindrop, he gets carried around. He is very good. Like, he'll call the hens whenever there's treats, and whenever our daughter's around, there are treats. So he's always calling the ladies around, and so he's just a very friendly rooster. And he even was willing to pose for some pictures around Halloween and wear costumes and different things like that. So just a really friendly breed. He
was our chicken pirate, and he just didn't mind. He just walked around as the pirate, no problem. So a lot of people were asking, like, what's a really good first breed? And the Bantam Breeds are, if you haven't ever had chickens before, and the Bantam Breeds are always a great gateway. They're smaller. Bantam means smaller, so a standard sized chicken is going to be, you know, the kind of chicken that lays you a pretty large sized chicken egg in the store, and the Bantams are going to be laying an egg sometimes a third of the size of a chicken egg. Like, it's pretty small. They're not really meant for egg production, but in terms of a pet and something that's just a really sweet gateway into having chickens in that rhythm, the Bantams are the way to go. So the Cochins, they come in two feather types, smooth and frizzle. You've seen some frizzle pictures on our feed. It kind of looks like the bird might have put its feathers into a light socket. All the feathers are kind of like every which way, and when they move it looks really, really funny. So the Cochins are a really good option. The Cochins, I think in 2022 we will be able to ship, but our Silkies and our Cerama, which are our other two small Bantam breeds, I don't know if we'll be able to ship them. We'll see. They're pretty fragile, but hopefully we'll be able to. But just to give you the heads up on that.
They're definitely, those two breeds are available for farm pickup.
So yeah, everything. Farm pickup, no problem there. It's just the shipping that might be a little tricky. Do you want to talk about Silkies?
Sure, yeah. The Silkies, they're not like a huge egg production bird, but they're just so much fun to have around. And again, like, there's been numerous pet Silkies that wander around, follow the kids around, that they're really social kind of birds. And I put it as, like, if you are, like, you know, have that glamorous LA kind of look, you want a Silkie. Like, if you're a guy who, like, has a tiny dog and always claim that it's your wife's dog, but everybody knows it's your dog, you want a Silkie. If you have a big lifted truck and you're, like, pretty macho, you probably also want a Silkie. Like, those are, like, the people who love Silkies, and I mean, everybody can love Silkies. They can be a little bit more broody. The Bantam breeds just kind of have that more in their nature, and so, you know, if you did want to try to hatch out chicks under a hen at some point, Silkies are great. Like, you don't need an incubator. You could do it natural with a Silkie. And yeah, so they're fun for that. They're sort of like in the apocalypse stash of having, like, your own incubator, like in a bird.
When you look at a Silkie, they're extra fluffy. They just look like they would be a really good mother hen, and they are. They're not particular about the breed that they raise up, so if you put fertile eggs or chicks of any other breed, they don't discriminate. They're happy to raise them. So
oftentimes we'll have this tiny Silkie hen who has her babies that are like twice her size that are following her around and feeding because they recognize her as the mother and she recognizes them as their chicks, as her chicks, and so it's always like a funny blended family to see that way.
Yeah, they're really sweet. You'd think looking at them that they wouldn't be really climate resilient, but out of all of our birds, when it's raining really hard, the Silkies are the ones that are out there. They look really goofy when they're wet, but they seem happy.
They kind of look like if a chicken was bred with a rabbit, that's a silkie. Like it doesn't look like feathers. It looks like fur. It looks like big fur. So
that's a good way to put it. Next up would be our Cerama, and our Cerama are even smaller than, like, they're not even a bantam size. They're beyond bantam. They're one of the world's smallest chicken breeds, so itty bitty. The Cerama are really good. If you really have like a purse chicken, this would be the purse chicken you want, because they're just so small. But they're also just really benevolent and kind. We have a lot of people who have picked them up and used them for rehabilitation of senior citizens, or just to give them some companionship. They'll just sit with them in their beds all day long and coo with them. They're a really sweet breed.
Yeah, they're a good companion bird, and their eggs are amazingly tiny. they're just everything about them is really cute.
Mm-hmm.
Even and regardless, like their roosters, again, like all the roosters that we have, they're, you know, the ones that we have, they're safe around children, they're safe around other people, and the roosters are like this. They're just, you know, hand size. They're small, but they still have that chivalrous quality of, you know, defending the hens. Like we had some out in a pasture, and a hawk swooped down, and you know, the rooster, he turned claws up and like chased off a hawk that was easily 5 times larger than it was, but it just wasn't having any of it. And it's fine around us because we're not a threat. We're part of the, you know, part of the flock. But when it recognized another that was not a part of the flock, it was very protective. So they're sweet. And they'll even, I've seen them do like mating or courting dances around the hens. Not all breeds will still do that, but it was still in the nature, or still is in the nature of the Ceramas, to do a little, you know, wing down and like dance around. So it's always interesting to watch that.
Yeah, they're really sweet birds. The crow on the rooster, any of our roosters, the crow usually matches the body size. And for a Cerama, it's more of like, wait, what was that? More so than like a big crow. So if you're looking for birds and you're within city limits and you do end up with a rooster, you know, that's one that the neighbors probably wouldn't even know that there's a rooster over there, because they're so cute. So those are our true like bantam small size birds, and going up in size a little bit, but still on the small side of things, like just over the edge of a bantam, are our double silver lace Barnevelders. And these are some gorgeous birds. Like out of any of the chickens in the chicken world, we've looked at a lot, like done a shameful amount of research, and definitely put our time into the different breeds. The double silver lace Barnevelders, we think, are the most beautiful, and they've got really sweet personalities. What do you think about their personalities?
Well, I was just gonna say about their feathering, like each feather has it's black, then silver, black, silver on each one, and so when you have like an entire bird covered in that, it just has like almost a hypnotic effect of having just like so much color, or like such a striking appearance when you see the lacing on them.
Yeah, it looks like some really intricate lace work that was done like hundreds and hundreds of years ago by different artists. They're really gorgeous birds. There's a lot of laced birds, but not double laced. So this double silver lacing is just so gorgeous. And they're also really sweet birds. They're chatty, but not overly loud when they lay eggs. They want to come up and socialize. They're a really good starter breed for people because they're just so benevolent and sweet. They do lay well. They lay smaller cream eggs, but they'll lay year-round under the right conditions, and they're remarkably cold hardy, and they do well with the heat. Most of our breeds are really climate resilient. That's one of the things that we breed for, because a lot of us are experiencing extreme highs and extreme lows in temperature. The earlier breeds that we talked about, they're not really great in extreme cold temperatures, but if you're in an area where it snows, then double silver lace Barnevelders, they definitely hold up. Next up on our list would be more of our high egg production breeds. So the first ones are going to be all laying kind of like a creamish color egg, sometimes with a pink tint to it. And the next of our breeds lineup is going to be all of the ones that lay the really cool color eggs. So if you're looking for the interesting egg basket, these are the ones. First one would be our Heritage Welsummer.
Yeah, the Heritage Welsummer is one of my favorite birds. It is just such a great production. Like it puts out a lot of eggs. They're a deep kind of chocolate colored egg. They're not our darkest egg, but they're pretty dark, and they have speckles on them. We've bred for speckling on the egg, so they have just amazing egg color. They produce a lot of eggs. I don't find them to be as personable like as the other birds that we've already spoken about, but they're sort of more of like just kind of doing their own thing. They're social within their flock, but they're less social with us. But sometimes a factor that happens with that is that they seem to be pretty predator wise, like that they have like I'm a little bit skeptical of you, and so if they have that personality or characteristic, then they're also generally kind of watchful of everything around them. So that's sort of a trade-off that you have as far as if you're looking for a social bird, they might not be your best choice. But if you're looking for like egg production with a really wow to them, like they're definitely a great bird.
The speckling on those eggs is really unique. There's many different breeders of Welsumers, but the line that we've been working on for the last 8 years, we've been cultivating those really big, fun dinosaur speckles. So you'll get kind of confetti speckles, dinosaur speckles over all of them. Sometimes a reverse bloom. A bloom is it's a layer that's put over the egg to protect it from different bacteria. It's on every single chicken egg, but some chickens will lay a heavier bloom on it to give the egg the look of almost like pink or purple, these different shades, and the Welsumers can do that. So in terms of the egg color and what it's going to bring to your basket, Welsumers are a really good pick. Next up, all these are kind of in the same category where they can be trained and they're sweet. There's nothing particularly wrong with their personalities. They're just not going to be like the purse or lap chicken that you're going to get from the Bantam breeds. It's just how it's going to go. But you're going to be getting really cool egg colors from them, and they're still going to be really sweet birds. Next up would be the Sage Egger, and that's a hybrid that we've created here on the farm. Really high egg production, similar body frame to the Welsumer, but they're going to look totally different. Their feathering is going to still have that kind of like rusty tones, but different featherings on their back. You can look on our website to see all of the different pictures of the adults and chicks of all of our breeds. The Sage Eggers are going to be laying a sage-colored egg with some fun speckling over it, kind of a lighter green egg. High production, climate resilient, really sweet birds. Next are our Moss Eggers, which is a favorite of Ryan's.
I like them because you get a lot of different tones. Like there's mostly like a moss shade, like a greenish shade, but within even like within siblings, you'll kind of get like a couple of different shades of that moss. And so with just one breed, you get a really colorful egg basket.
Yeah, so if you're just looking to have all different earth tones or kind of forest tones, the Moss Egger is your one. They're not going to be laying any light green eggs, but they will be laying darker green, sometimes browns, but not just a boring brown, like really interesting shades of browns. A lot of people have been asking, what's up with your cocoa eggers? Why don't you have cocoa eggers for 2022? And what we decided to do was merge the cocos with our moss to continue for more genetic diversity and to create that really deeper, rich ability to have more earth, almost forest tones. You know, if I could almost rename the Moss Eggers like a forest egger, that's what I would name them for 2022. But Moss Egger, it is what they are. It's these beautiful colors of moss and forest colors. Some browns, some greens, and the cocos are going to be coming in with them. So that's what happened with the cocoa eggers. The Moss Eggers are going to be coming in a few different feather colors, black, blue, and then the white with black flecks, which you'll see on our website. And these are some big, sturdy birds.
Mm-hmm. They're also pretty friendly. Like they're more of a curious bird than say the Welsumers that we were just talking about. They're more personable. They do want to sort of, when you come into the pasture, they always like come to greet and are like curious about you, and if you know, they're very treat driven as well. So they'll come right up to you, that they're really interested in, they're a little more so interested in people. And like Francesca said, they're bigger, and sometimes those like bigger birds, they just maybe have a little more self-confidence or something. Like they just feel like they're sturdy and they're okay, and so they're not so concerned. So
confident in themselves, no like little man syndrome going on with the roosters. But even despite their size, the roosters, we haven't had any negative experiences with the Moss Egger roosters. Different breeds, we've had to pull different roosters from our breeding program because we always pull roosters that show any signs of aggression, because making sure that our birds are bred for temperament is one of the top things that we're looking for always. And we've just never had any issues with the Moss Eggers. They're just a really laid back, sweet breed. It's possible the bad apple could always fall from our sweet tree, so you got to look out with your flocks. And if they're going to show any kind of temperament issues, any of our roosters, it's going to be right around the time when they hit adulthood and all those hormones are really coming online. That's when you'll see if there's going to be a personality shift. So be on the lookout for that. But it seems to be rare. We haven't gotten a lot of reports from folks. But the Moss Eggers in general have been a really sweet bet. I would consider them a dual-purpose bird. Both the males and females have some meat on them if you're looking for a dual-purpose bird. Next up are Azure Acres, and our Azure Acres are one of only 2 breeds that we work with on the farm that we can guarantee you female chicks. So if you are knowing that you can't have the possibility of any roosters, go for Azure Acres. The second breed that we can guarantee females would be our German Bienfelders, and I'll talk about them after the Azures. The Azure Acres are going to be a really high production blue egg laying bird. Sometimes their eggs will have kind of a greenish tint to them. They can lay year-round under the right conditions, and they just don't stop with the laying. They're really sweet. They're not as personable as... I would say Welsumers are more personable than the Azure Acres. The Azure Acres really like to just do their own thing and forage. They're not spastic. They're not gonna like freak out when you come into the barnyard like you're gonna eat them like some breeds will. Like some breeds are just like complete spazzes. We don't work with any of those breeds. But the Azure Acres are definitely like doing their own thing, happy to do their own thing. If you're looking for just lots of eggs throughout the year, I would definitely recommend adding them, and they're a really good base for any olive acre projects if you're looking to create your own olive acres. Next up are the German Bienfelders. The German Bienfelders are a pure heritage breed that we work with, and these are bigger birds. They're about the same size as the Moss Acres, and they are another breed that we can guarantee females of. So again, if you know that you can't have males, go for the Germans, go for the Azures. The Germans are going to be really large layers of cream, sometimes to tannish eggs, and their eggs have this really interesting smooth sheen over the top of them. Neither the Azures or the Germans will have a bloom over their eggs. Their eggs are going to be pretty like clear with what they're going to be in terms of the coloring. The Germans, I would say, are dual purpose. They're going to be larger for both male and female, more meat on them, and definitely a bigger crow on the males. And the females, not particularly chatty. The females of the Germans are very personable. So if you can only have females and you're looking for a personable breed, Germans are the one. Much like the Moss Acres, they'll come right up to you. They'll want to say hello. They'll be looking for treats. They'll be right underfoot. They're just sweet.
Yeah. Whenever I go in there, into their pasture, I always have to sort of like walk more slowly. It's like being around toddlers or something. Like they're just sort of like coming up to you, and they're not necessarily noticing if they're going right underneath your feet. So you kind of have to be like, oh, okay, like, you know, slow yourself down a little bit. You can't just sort of blast through that area because they're expecting a little bit of attention from you. So, which
is a good thing, right? Yeah. We all need to slow down a little bit. The Germans like are large birds, and they make you slow when you're around them. So definitely one I think to add to your list. New for 2022 coming back are Alchemist Blues, and when we originally had Alchemist Blues a few years ago, people were loving them, and we had some fertility issues with the rooster, and so we had to end the breeding program, but we've been able to bring it back around for something that is just really sweet. The personality on the Alchemist Blues is close to an ice bar, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Curious, really good foragers. They're going to be sleek, svelte birds, blue in feathering, hence the name Alchemist Blue. They're going to be laying bluish, greenish eggs at a really high frequency. So if you're looking for more beautiful eggs in your egg basket and a really sweet looking bird to be visually stimulating, the Alchemist Blues are going to be them. Their feed to egg ratio is really good. They seem to just lay tons and tons of eggs and not just be on the feed constantly. Some breeds just are eating a lot, and I don't really know where they're storing it or what they're doing with it, but the conversion on the Alchemist Blues and the Azure Acres, I must say, is really good. Next we have the Ice Bar, and the Ice Bar is one of our favorite original breeds that we worked with. The Ice Bar are one of the few true heritage breeds that will lay a naturally green egg. And these green eggs are really gorgeous. The green eggs have these big, interesting speckles on them. Sometimes the speckles are purple. Sometimes the speckles are brown. Sometimes it's a reverse speckling, so it's these big, bloomy white speckles. But they lay a really unique egg, and it's definitely what caught my eye in the beginning when I wanted to work with them. Good foragers, really sweet. The females aren't particularly chatty. I would say that out of all of our breeds, these are the ones that have the most kind of like wild instincts to them, but it doesn't make them spastic. It just means that they're really predator-wise even the females of this breed are constantly looking up and scanning the sky for predation. Usually with most of our other breeds, the females are looking down and foraging, and the roosters are there looking up and making sure the hens are safe. But both female and male of the ice bar breed are really predator-wise.
Their eggs look like dinosaur eggs. Like they're otherworldly, or they're from another epic of time. I mean, like what she was saying with like green eggs with purple spots. Like you're just like, yeah, it's mind blowing when you see that. You're like, this is possible. Like chickens do this. So. Yeah, it's such a neat bird to get to work with, and to have like working with like heritage breeds like this, and making sure that these genetic lines are still around, and to like also maintain like good integrity of the breed, because oftentimes like these breeds can become so rare that to find good genetics that can still be viable and not have inbreeding or things like that, it's been a pretty major feat to do that, and we have, and so it's something that's a really unique offering that we have to have these birds. And like Francesca was saying with the foraging, it's interesting, some of the other breeds, like they'll forage in a way that like it sort of like they'll moonscape an area, like they'll just like scrape it down to dirt, you know, like they'll really go for it. But these guys, they are more selective in their foraging. Like they do a lot of foraging, but they don't just scratch until like they've killed everything. Like they'll pick, and like there's still like everything's still growing nicely, but it's almost like manicured. It's like very meticulous the way that they choose to forage and that they do their foraging to not be overly destructive or anything like that. So, and part of that's also because they are a smaller breed, so they're less intense on the land than maybe a larger breed might be. Like if you have enough space, it doesn't really matter, but if space is a consideration, and there's predation, then like these are a really great bird, as well as their egg color.
Well said, sir. Let's talk about our Morans.
Mm-hmm.
Our Morans are, the French black copper Morans are a pretty big bird. They're not going to be laying at the same rate as the Azures or the Welsummers or the Sage. They lay 1 to 2 eggs less a week, but the eggs they do lay are the show-stopping eggs. These are the dark chocolate, large, really glossy, gorgeous eggs that you'll see in those dozens and go, wait, what? Who laid that? Like, people get really excited about the Moran's eggs. But I think the personality and the beauty of the bird also makes them great to have in a flock. What do you think?
Yeah, they're a really friendly bird. Their coloring is also really pretty. Like when you sort of at first glance, it's like a blackish bird, hence black copper. But the copper part like really comes through, especially on their neck. There's this iridescence that, you know, at first glance you might just see a black bird, and then the more you look at it, you're like, wow, there's like copper, there's like greens. It's almost like looking at like an oil sheen, where it has like this sort of glow or something that comes from like deep within it, where you can't even, it doesn't translate into a color per se. Like you couldn't be like, oh, it's this color, but like when you look at it, you're like, oh, like there it is. So they have a really beautiful quality. They're a friendly bird. They you know, again, like that's another breed that our daughter likes to spend time back with them and like train them, and which just involves, you know,
her throwing
them,
treats.
giving them treats, and they come, and she'll be in the field, and they just gather around and like wait for her. So they're or if they see her, you know, in the backyard, they all come running over to the edge of their pasture to be near to her. So they definitely recognize different people and like want to have that relationship. And like Francesca said, they are a show-stopping egg. So they're, yeah, especially if you're, you know, creating like dozens for yourself or a dozen for someone else, like even if you don't have a lot of those eggs, like having at least a few of them mixed in, like it makes everything else pop.
Next we have the Olive Acres, and the Olive Acres are going to be a mix of Morans and a couple other things to create a darker green egg, but not as dark as the Moss Acres. So it's going to be a different shade than the Sage, different shade than the Moss. It's a whole different green. So if you're looking for a varied basket, this is another good bird to have. A little smaller than the Morans, higher laying rate than the Morans. They come in blue and black feathering. Sturdy bird, good genetic diversity. So if you're looking for reliable green, that's coming from them. All the same good qualities that Ryan just mentioned of the Morans you can find in that bird. Something that we started in, 2020 with the pandemic was the offering of our Homesteaders Breeds and our Homesteaders Box. Our Homesteaders Box of Chicks is a way to be able to get chicks from us in a more economical way. These are breeds, birds that are from our breeds and hatched from eggs that maybe aren't the exact quality that we're looking for in all of our other birds that we would want to be selling. Like maybe it's a Morans that's laying a lighter color egg or something like that. That's going to be in our Homesteaders Box. So if you're running, what's the difference with that? It's birds that are still going to be sweet. They're from all of our other great stock, but they aren't going to be laying the same quality of egg. They're still going to be strong, climate resilient, and good layers for you. So the Homesteaders Box also has one interesting cross in it this year that we won't be offering in any other capacity, like no a la carte chicks. And that's a crowed Lanshan crossed with an Americana. And these birds are these huge, gentle giants that have feathered legs. They lay a light green egg. They're very, very sweet. I say that about all of our birds, but really all of our birds are really sweet. We don't have any mean birds here. They come right up to you, really good. Despite their size, they're very heat tolerant. Sometimes it can get up past 100 degrees here, up past 110, and these birds didn't have any kind of issues. That's why we wanted to offer them out, because we feel like they're just a really good bird. Last year when people received them in the boxes as a surprise, they said, can I just get a whole box of these because they're so sweet? And they are, but they're only going to be available in the Homesteaders Box. In our surprise box this year, that's going to be the only way that you can get Americana chicks. Everyone's been asking, how can we get more Americana chicks? And we're still working on the flock. Like, quality always comes first before quantity for us. We're not just going to be pumping out hundreds of birds that aren't laying like the egg color that we're looking for or don't have the personality type that we're looking for. So we have a smaller Americana flock right now, and so the only way that you can be getting them is in the surprise box. So that's it for the whole,
So that's two different boxes.
Two different boxes.
Homesteader box.
Thank you.
And there's a surprise box.
Yep.
And the Homesteader box has what?
Homesteaders Box is going to be having eggs, chicks that were hatched from eggs that aren't going to be the exact quality that we were looking for.
So slightly lighter for Morans or some other quality like that. And it has, in addition, that's the only way to get which breed?
The crowed Lanshan and the Americana cross.
Okay. And then the surprise box, what birds are in that?
The surprise box is a surprise! It's a mix of all of our pure breeds. And in the surprise box, 30% of the chicks in that box are going to be guaranteed female. And then 70% are going to be made up of straight run chicks. In the Homesteaders Box, it's going to be 100% straight run chicks. There's no guaranteed females in that box.
So straight run means we just don't know. It'll be male, female, you just have to wait and see. We don't know. So
yeah,
we'll find out.
Straight run means each chick has a 50-50 chance of being male or female. And a lot of people will ask, well, why don't you just sell all of your chicks as guaranteed in the gender? And, you know, it's not always reliable to tell the gender of chicks. For us, the most clear way that we can tell is our auto-sexing or our sex-linked breeds, which are our Germans and our Azure Acres I've talked about before. Other ways that larger scale hatcheries will tell the gender of chicks is by doing something called vent sexing, which is very rude, where they turn the chick over and they're turning its backside inside out to look for a sign there if it's male or female. It's not possible to do on all the breeds. I certainly wouldn't want that to happen to me, and so I don't do that to our birds.
So you're basically turning them inside out to prolapse them and see their sex organs.
Yeah.
But that's not really humane. We're not going to do that.
No, it's not what we're about. So all of our birds, other people have asked too, like, could you do feather sexing? Sometimes people will swear by the length of the feather tips, and when they're a certain age, and we just haven't found it to be reliable, and we only want to sell birds that we know 100% are going to be female if we're guaranteeing them female. So that's why we just have 2 breeds that we can guarantee female, the rest are straight run. So if you know, okay, I want 2 Moss Agers in my flock that are going to be hens, but the Moss Agers are a straight run breed. If you want 2 hens, buy 4 chicks, because in that ratio of 50-50 male-female, chances are you're going to be ending up with 2 hens. Maybe you end up with 4 and you hit the hen lottery, and that's great. We truly do not pick up the hens or the chicks and like look at them carefully to see. It's totally luck of the draw, because that's the only fair way to do it for people.
We look at them for health and stuff, but we're not turning them inside out. Like
we're not turning them inside out or using their feathers and their wings, because I just don't think it's reliable. One of you's commenting that sounds horrible, like the vent sexing. It really is. Like when you look at a lot of the practices that have just been employed over years and years of large scale hatcheries, why we decided to start our hatchery. There's so many ways that chickens have been treated that people just don't think about, that it's just like, oh, they're just chickens. It's totally fine to treat them this way. Like, per capita on planet Earth. I know I've said this before, so forgive me, but it's important to say, chickens are the most abused animal in the world because people just view them almost like produce, like zucchinis or cucumbers or something. But chickens are smart, chickens recognize faces, chickens are sweet, and they deserve to be treated well. And so if we see a practice that we know it just doesn't feel right in our hearts, we're not going to do that. So that's why we just don't do vent sexing. A lot of people will ask, well, what do I do if I end up with too many roosters? You know, this is a good question. Hopefully you would be able to have a home for them if you know that you can't have more than 1 or 2 in your flock lined up. There's a lot of people who do have larger pastures and ranges who do want to be having more roosters for protection for their flocks. Some people who are of the homesteading persuasion will process and eat those roosters, and that bothers some people, but to us, I feel like that's so much better than what's happening with male chicks just being killed right away when they're born in large-scale hatcheries. So you're weighing all these things out, and at the end of the day, that feels better in our hearts, and you just have to land up with you and see what feels best to you with that. But knowing that if you get straight-run chicks, there is always the chance of roosters in there. And some people will ask, okay, well, how many roosters can I keep? Because maybe you fall in love with all of the roosters. And for high fertility eggs, if you want to hatch out your own eggs or have them for like a home hatching project, you want at least 1 rooster for 7 hens. It is possible to have more roosters in there. And it just depends on what their personalities are like when they're all together and as they grow up. When they do hit that maturity, that sexual maturity age, that's when you'll be able to see what the personalities are going to be like. And as long as they're not bothering the hens, and you'll know if they're bothering the hens, you know, there's just going to be too much mating happening, or the hens are going to start losing feathers on their backs. That's when you know, okay, there's just too many roosters in this flock. It's possible in one of our flocks, in the Moss Acres, we just didn't want to get rid of any of the boys. We had so many, it was almost like a 2-hen to 1 rooster ratio, because they were just all sweet and they all cohabitated just fine. So really just looking at the dynamics of your own flock and seeing what works for your family. And of course, making sure that your family's safety is put first. You want to make sure that if any of the roosters are coming after you, if you feel unsafe turning your back to them or bending over to fill the grain feed or something like that, to get rid of that rooster, because your family's safety is always number 1. No beautiful bird is worth, you know, you getting scratched up or your children getting scratched up. So always bear that in mind. Cruising through these questions. Someone was wondering what kind of waters and feeders we had, and Ryan has spent so much time, thank you Ryan, streamlining our processes here to save us time. You know, some people might think if I'm not out there doing all of the chores every single day, I'm lazy, or I'm not doing the full process of having chickens. But we're here to tell you that if you streamline the simple chores, you'll have more time to be able to take better care of the chickens. And Ryan has done a great job of streamlining our watering systems in particular. You want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So let's talk chicken nipples.
Well, that's awkward.
Yeah, we use chicken nipples, which basically it's a little dangly thing that they can toggle with their beaks, and it's red in color around the outside, and then there's just a little metal piece inside. And when they see the red, they're curious and they'll peck at it, and when they peck, then water comes out, and so they over time learn that that's how they get water. And so what I've done is I've taken a section of PVC pipe, drilled and threaded, and then put the chicken nipples into the PVC. We have some Instagram videos on installation of it, so you can sort of go back through and see. But essentially, it's just, that's the watering system, and then I have that hooked up to, you can either use a bucket, or what we use is a Rubbermaid trash can, because they're indestructible and they don't break down with UV light. So they're just, it's an infrastructure that you can create, and that it will last for years and years without needing like a lot of service or anything like that. So we have, what I use is a 30-gallon Rubbermaid trash can, and then I just have the PVC coming off with the chicken nipples. And so we fill the trash can full of water, and then it gravity feeds into the chicken nipple system. We keep the waters outside of the coop, so when the door opens in the morning, they can come out and they'll, you know, usually check things out and come and get drinks. and then throughout the day they can get water as needed, and that keeps the water out of the coop, which eliminates having a lot of mess inside of your coop. Having waters in the coop we've done, but inevitably
something leaks.
It either leaks or it gets spilled or something like that, and then what ends up happening is there's poop in the water, so then it's unhygienic, or the water leaks out onto the bedding, and then the bedding gets wet, and wet bedding becomes unhygienic. So we keep the water separate, so that way they have a comfortable living environment inside the coop, and then they can get their drinks poop free outside of the coop. And that other part, since there is no reservoir that they have direct access to, it keeps there from there being any feces in their water. Like a lot of the waters that you can set down on the ground, or even hanging, a lot of times they like to try to find a different place to roost, and so they'll hop up there, and while they when they hop off, then they poop and it ends up in the water. So that's what we found to be the cleanest way of doing it. Now, the feed we actually do keep in the coops. So we use just like the galvanized metal feeding buckets, basically, that you pour the food in on the top and then the feed is down in the bottom. And we put those inside the coop. We do that because it prevents rats or mice from being able to get to it. And then at night, if you were to forget or leave it outside, then that's sort of drawing in more wildlife. So then you've got raccoons and other things coming to eat the grain, which you just basically don't want to be training wildlife to be hanging out around your coop, or that kind of like predators to be hanging out around the coop, or to be providing grain and then increasing like rat or mice populations. So keeping that inside the coop, it doesn't end up messy because it's dry, it's grain, so if a little bit spills out, it doesn't turn into being an issue for cleanliness or hygiene or anything like that. So that's what we do with our feed and water systems.
We do have free choice feed for our chickens, and we don't have any issues with the chickens overeating. It's not like some cats or dogs where you need to restrict their feed. Breeds that are made just for meat production, you definitely want to restrict their feed. We don't deal with any of that. All of our birds are bred for egg production, and so they're smart. They know when they're full, and they know that they can just stop eating. Keeping it inside the coop is really good to also prevent wild birds from coming, and also having the watering system like Ryan's talking about, because it's fully enclosed. It's covered, it's hygienic, it's clean. The nipples are the only point where water comes out, and wild birds haven't keyed in to know that's how they're getting the water. Wild birds coming in are a way that disease can possibly come into your flock. Our birds aren't kept in warehouses. They're outside in pasture underneath sunshine and being able to be out in the dirt with the bugs, and so making sure that wildlife isn't interested in interacting with them during the day is a consideration for us. And so that's why we have the systems that we have, which also save so much time and not just trying to clean their water. So I mean, easily 6 hours a week in just the watering systems that Ryan's design has saved us. So I'll link up that video. He talks about it. We have back an old IGTV video, and I'll put it up after this. People were asking what we're looking for when we're breeding our birds, like what are the different steps. The very first thing that's important to us is health and genetic diversity. If it's not going to be a healthy, viable, genetically diverse flock, then the chicks aren't going to be coming out healthy, and we take our job really seriously. We want to be providing you all with really healthy, robust stock to be able to have your birds. We want them to grow up and live full, long lives for you and be free of any kind of diseases. So genetic diversity and health is number one. And number two is temperament. How sweet are these birds going to be? And even if hens are looking mean, usually it's the roosters that are going to be an issue. Hens going after other roosters isn't so common, but if that does happen, it's usually because the hen's just had enough of some rooster just coming after her, and I don't feel like that's aggression. I feel like that's just her standing up for herself and being like, no more attention from you. I don't pull a hen for that. But if a hen is cornering other hens and going after them, then that is a sign that there's something going on with that hen that we don't want to be breeding for. So we would pull her out from the breeding program. Same with roosters. If we don't feel safe around the roosters, if our children who are 8 and 4 aren't safe around the roosters, definitely pulling them from the breeding program. So breeding for temperament is huge for us. And then after that, it's egg laying ability. How well can these birds lay? Because even if they lay like this gorgeous golden egg, if you're only getting one a year, that's not very fun. And we want you to be able to actually receive food from your birds, because it's a cycle, right? You're taking care of them, we want them to take care of you. So egg laying ability is next, and then egg color. And constantly selecting for those really fun speckles or unique shades, unique blooms. And very bottom on the list is standard of perfection. So if you're looking for birds that you could be showing and winning like medals and awards from, our birds aren't bred, that's not top of our list. Some breeders, that's all they focus on. But for us, we're really wanting to provide people with healthy birds that are going to be giving them a really sweet experience, where they can go out into the barnyard and collect beautiful eggs and not have to carry a big stick because they're frightened the rooster's going to come after them. So if you're looking for something just to add like sweet quality and just a good experience with chickens in your life, that's what we're breeding for, and we want to be able to offer that out to the world. So that's our list of all the things that we are doing. You guys have been really patient. You've been hearing all of our rundowns of all the breeds. I hope it's been helpful for all of you, and I think we have time to take like 3 questions here before we sign off from the live. So I'm going to look at the feed and see what you guys are asking.
See one about asking, how do you introduce new birds to an existing flock?
Yeah, we get this question a lot, and this is a really good question. There's lots of different ways to do it. We always recommend at least introducing 2 birds. If you can introduce more than 2, that's great. Introducing 1 bird into an existing flock is not a good idea because it's going to be bullied. So what we like to do is something called the crate method, and it depends on how big your run and coop are. You want to make sure when you're introducing new birds that you're putting them into a safe environment with your existing flock. So I take a large dog crate that isn't enclosed, but it has more metal slats around it, so there's plenty of ventilation, and I put the new birds in the crate with food and water, and I leave them there for 3 days. On the night of the 3rd day, I take them...
Where is this crate put?
Where is there? Thank you. I put it inside, just in your driveway. I leave them there for 3 days. No, I put them inside of the run or the coop where predators can't get to them at night, but this way the existing flock can see them. So everyone's coop, everyone's setup is really different, so you're going to have to just kind of replicate this idea within your flock. I mean, some people just put a bird straight in at night with the others and see how they all do. If you have a really laid-back flock, that can work. If you have a flock where there is a pecking order and the ladies definitely have a way that they're moving around each other, try the crate method. Put the crate inside of the run for 3 days, 3 nights, and then the night of the 3rd day, take those new birds out and put them on the roost, if you can, at the same level as all of the other chickens, so that when everybody wakes up, they all look at each other like, all right, I guess you've always been here, and they'll be more receptive to sharing the space. When we do that, we always make sure to have there be no issues of lack in the space. So plenty of food, plenty of water, plenty of clean bedding, because when you're introducing new birds into the space, it can be a moment of stressor for your flock. So you want to make sure to get all those other external stressors taken care of, so there's no issues there in terms of them having something to fight over. If there's something to fight over, then the existing flock will welcome the new girls in without any issue. It's totally normal for them to chase the new girls around and kind of put them in their place a little bit, but if anybody's being cornered and bloodied, that's when it's an issue, and you know that you need to try some new methods to getting everybody to be incorporated. Rescue remedy for pets totally works. I know it sounds woo-woo and weird, but it's just something to kind of calm everybody down. Adding electrolytes and vitamins into the water also gives their immune system a boost. They feel like somewhere cellularly they're being taken care of, and there's no reason for them to fight. It's a really good question. Someone's asking, can you pick up chicks that you order at the farm? Yes. We talk a lot about shipping, but yeah, absolutely. We have farm pickup available. We have a self-serve farm stand in front of our front gate. So once you've placed your order on our website, we have a whole new website this year. We're so excited about you guys. And Saturday is the opening of our pre-sale for our chicks for 2022. I know it's early, like we're opening it in November, but people have been asking, and we want to make sure that you guys can get the chicks that you want, and just have that peace of mind. There's so many supply chain issues and like uncertainty in the world, and we don't want to add to people's uncertainty. We want people to know, like, we're going to be getting these chicks. It's okay. So you can, starting this Saturday, order them for February through October of next year, and we have this beautiful calendar that's going to pop up, and you can choose your weeks and what chicks you want and availability of the chicks. And we can also offer farm pickup, which was your question, Forgive me, I get long-winded and excited. Farm pickup or shipping. When you choose farm pickup, you'll be able to select what day of the week and what time you want to come on the week that you've selected to pick up your chicks, and they'll be ready for you at the self-serve farm stand, and we'll send you an email confirmation and everything. We don't do farm tours, so you won't be coming here and like coming into the farm because of the biosecurity. We take the health of our flocks really seriously, like I was mentioning before, so we don't offer farm tours or have people come in. Your chicks will be waiting for you outside of the gate. Have you seen any other questions scroll by that were interesting?
I was just listening to you. Sorry.
Let me see if I can scroll. Can I scroll down without making this fall? Oh, I can. How cool is that? Let's see here. What do you recommend for introducing a new rooster to a flock? That's a lot more easy. If there's no current rooster there, then the new rooster will just go right in, and the hens will kind of look at him like, "Who are you?" And he'll walk in like, "I'm the rooster." And then if you throw some grain or some treats out, then he can tell the ladies are there, because that's what they like to do. They like to, you're nodding like you.
The roosters like to have an opportunity to be like gregarious or chivalrous, like to serve a purpose other than breeding. So they do scan the skies. Like our birds are really watchful. Like our roosters are always sort of like scanning the sky and making sure there's no hawks or any predators coming. If there is, they're always like, you'll learn the chicken language. Like you'll hear different calls for different things. Like we can be, here, and if I hear a certain sound, like I know there's a hawk in the back because the rooster's telling everyone there's a hawk, and the hens immediately run in, and he's last man out. He's making sure everybody gets in, and he's keeping an eye on that hawk and will attack if necessary, or defend rather. But to the other side, like they also, when we come into the pasture, like oftentimes they associate us with food, with treats. Like they know that we're coming to give care, and so when they see us, like they usually come up not out of aggression or protection, but just like, hey, I know this guy's going to throw a little food, and if I tell the girls that there's some food over here, then they're going to know I'm like a pretty nice guy. And so that part, like you can kind of see that. And so when you go in and you throw the feed down, a good rooster, and the ones that we have, like they'll just start doing a call, and so all the hens come running. They might be somewhere else doing something else, but as soon as they hear that call, they're like, oh, there's treats over there. And so they turn around and come running, and he will stand back. Like he'll usually stand back and just watch them eat. And sometimes,
good rooster will.
Sometimes he'll have a little bit also, but he's not like elbowing the other ones out. He's like making sure that like he called, they're coming, they're getting their feed, they're getting the treat. And so it's a sweet thing to have a rooster. And so like what Francesca was saying for your question of like, how do you introduce a rooster? If there's already several of the roosters, you got to make sure that there's not scarcity, because that's when there's confrontation. Like then they're like defending or protecting because there's this scarce thing, whether it's space or food or water or hens. If you have too, like she said earlier, if you have too many roosters to hens ratio, and that it just depends on their personalities. Like 7-to-1's a rule of thumb, but sometimes we've had 2-to-1, and other times we've had it be less than 7-to-1. Just sort of depends on the breeds and their personalities. So but if it's either only rooster, then you can put them in there at night. Is always the best time for introduction, is just put them in there, and then when they wake up they'll see him. But I don't know, would you introduce midday too, or is it?
The only downside with midday of introduction of any of these birds, like if you pick up an adult bird and then just set it right in a pasture midday, it's not going to know where home is. You want to train it to home. So that's why putting it in the coop for a few days is a really good thing. We will lock birds into a coop for a few days, the food and water, when it's not too hot, and we know that there's not going to be any danger. That way they know this is home, and then when you let them out, then they go out, they forage, and then they come back. They've imprinted on that space. But if you just let them out in the pasture, they're going to try and roost in a tree or in a bush because they think that's where they need to go to be safe. So putting them into the coop is the best. For some people, they don't have pasture. They just have a run in a coop, and that's great. And then you can put them in there midday because they're not going to try and jump over the neighbor's fence.
Yeah, and I guess just sort of elaborating on that part, if you're just beginning, if this is your first flock, and so you're going to start with chicks from us, and so you're raising them up in the brooder, and you've got these little guys, and they're growing, and then you get to the juvenile stage where they're around 6 weeks old, and they're adult feathering's coming on, and the temperature and everything's good for them to be outside, then that's when we would definitely like put them into all together, like into their coop, and leave them in there for maybe 2 days, 2 to 3 days, so that way they're, like she said, imprinted on the coop. And something else that we like to do is that first day that you let them out, whenever you decide to do it, you can open the coop door to let them out, and do it maybe 2 hours before sunset, so that way they're not spending the whole, if you have a large pasture, so that way they're not sort of wandering far and wide, but they're sort of like coming out, they're exploring a little bit, but they notice like, oh, sun's gonna set in a little bit here, so they don't go too far, but they start to learn the lay of the land, and they learn to go up and down the ramp, and so they're sort of like step one. And then the next day you can either scoot it a few more hours and let them out midday, or you can just, depending if it seems like it's an easy transition for the birds you have, you can just let it go from there morning until afternoon, and then they'll come in at night. So
it's really sweet to see chickens get to experience dirt and grass for the first time, because you'll see it's just in their DNA to want to interact with it. They'll start scratching, they'll start dirt bathing. Seeing baby chicks dirt bathe is so cute. They'll be looking for bugs, and it'll just make your heart feel good of like, oh, this is exactly how these birds want to be treated, and I'm providing that for them. It's nice to be there and to see it for the first time. They get to go out, get a cup of tea or coffee or whatever you like to drink, and just sit there and enjoy this beauty that's unfolding before you, and connecting with your future flock that's going to be providing you with eggs and companionship. It's a really sweet process.
That is the other nice part about letting them out in the afternoon, is like that, seeing, because people are generally home at that time, so like you can spend that a couple of hours out there with them, and so they're imprinting on the place, and you can be out there and throw them some feed or some treats or something like that, and so like it just creates a really sweet scene. And so there's like another level of bonding that happens where they're outside and you're outside with them, compared to wherever you just were if you were in the home or in a brooder area or a barn or wherever you were keeping them leading up to releasing them out. So when they imprint on the land and you, it's really sweet.
Yeah. I hope this has been useful for you guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We have so many different possible topics that we could cover in the world of chicken keeping. Like, this just scratches the surface of some of it. If you're a beginning chicken keeper and have no idea where to start, we have chicken keeping classes available on our website that are go at your own pace, and you can just watch them at your own leisure. And then we have live Q&As over Zoom a couple times a year to get your individual questions answered. So if you wanted to know more about beginning chicken keeping, check that out on our website. And I saw some really good questions, like really nitty-gritty breeding questions scroll by that are going to take too long to explain here for what we have, but we have an advanced chicken keeping class for that exact thing of incubating eggs, which eggs to save, how to prevent inbreeding, and things like that. So check out that class. We also have our quail keeping class online, and we're really excited to open up our 2022 chick sales this Saturday. So hopefully you all looked over the website and seen what breeds are a good match for you, and we can start to accept your orders Saturday. Thank you so much for your support and allowing us to do what we can do, and being able to hopefully shine a light for other farms and the poultry industry in general of better treatment of chickens, better treatment of the natural world. We hope that you all have a really sweet day. Thanks for tuning in. Let's see if I can figure out how to end this properly. I don't do lives very often. Oh my goodness. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.